All right. It's a beautiful day here in California, and I have a neighbor about 3 hours away who's who has gifted the world with this beautiful book this week on Amazon. And I'm going to bring her in here and let her talk. And those of you that know me personally, you know that I could never pronounce her name. So, but I'm going to have her come on here. She is a former reporter for a newspaper, and she's a former journalist. She's a poet. She's an author, and she's a great spiritual being, as I find out from the short relationship that we've had. And what's interesting is how we connected, which I hope that she'll talk about. But without further ado, first off, just one more time, this book is out on Amazon and other online book agencies. You'll be able to find this. You should be able to order it in a hardback, this or paperback. I don't know if it's on a download yet. Is it on the ebook too?
Okay.
Okay, download. It's not there. All right. Blessings and peace, and good morning to you, neighbor.
Good morning, Bill, and thank you very much for doing this. I have to straight away tell you that you have been a big part of this journey for this book that started a long time ago. So for our readers, before we begin, our viewers, before we begin, I have to explain certain things. We are talking about this book. I know that you will know who Agastya is, right? But I know a lot of viewers might have heard this name for the first time. So let me try to first introduce the very source of this book, Agastya. Who is Agastya? If you go back into Indian history, you know that just like the Bible for the Christians or the Quran for the Muslims, we have what we call the Vedas. These Vedas are scriptural texts that were brought to the world purportedly by these great men who could connect to the higher consciousness and bring that knowledge to the world. And they documented it in texts, which are still extant. They're still existing. So these men were called Rishi. So the Ri part of the Rishi means somebody who hears. So these are men who heard the divine knowledge and brought it to the world. Now, these rishis are credited with documenting copious texts on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, including plastic surgery, all the long time ago, physics, chemistry, and science of prediction. So we actually have a vast knowledge of texts available in India that a lot of scholars in major universities like Cambridge or Harvard are still working on and discovering or rediscovering that knowledge and bringing it to the world. Now, among these rishis, we first find the mention of Agastya, one of the greatest rishis in the Indian tradition. He is credited, we first see him as the author of Vedas, about 25 hymns from the oldest of the Vedas, which is called the Rig Veda, and we are talking about 1800 BCE. That's a long time ago. And then we see that he continues to find his mention or his presence as an author or as a creator of a particular field throughout history to the modern times. We have historical texts about him, referring to him in 300 CE and much later texts. So here we are looking at a rishi or a sage or a person who is transcending time, while all the other rishis are basically confined to certain areas of expertise. We see Agastya covering a vast major areas of subjects like creating the oldest forms of martial arts, which are still existing, called Kalaripayattu and Silambam. And these are still practiced. in Kerala and are gaining a lot of popularity around the world. And then we hear the hymns, the sacred hymns that he composed. They're very powerful hymns, like the Aditya Hridayam or the Lalita Sahasranamam that is credited to him. That is being used in worship even today, after all these years. Then we see an entire system of alternative medicine called Siddha medicine, and even that is credited to him. And then we also have something called the Nadi Shastra, which is how somebody predicts someone else's life or what is going to happen to them. And these were written in palm leaf manuscripts thousands of years ago. They're credited to Agastya. And people go to these people who actually have these original manuscripts. They give them their thumbprints, and then they cross-refer and find the information about that person. And I know that Reverend Bill has had experience with that, and a lot of people who have gone there swear by it. So even that is credited to Agastya. And geographically, if we look at him, we find statues of Agastya all over the world, in different museums, and all over India and Southeast Asia, we find mention of him or his presence. It could be, in a village named after him, or lake named after him, a mountain lake named after him, or even the star Canopus named after him. And if we keep talking about him, we can go on for hours, because his is a huge personality that covers an incredible time span, including today, and that's what we're going to come to. And but if you're interested to know more about him, I would encourage you to read my book, Agastya, History, Legend, and Reality, and that is available on Amazon as well. And this is the book. And I would like to say that at this point, that when I wrote this book, the Singapore Museum Indian Heritage Center has a statue of Agastya, and they said they couldn't find anybody to speak about him. And they invited me to speak on Agastya based on a book. So I was happy to present that. And I had a co-presenter who, again, just like Reverend Bill, I met him through my work on Agastya. He's called Dr. Mahesh, a high-level Kalari Payattu master and a guru in India. And he's actually taken the gist of what we did in the presentation and produced YouTube videos, which hopefully we'll have in the description of this video as well. So you can learn more about Agastya either by reading my book or by going through those videos. And then there is a lot of information about him on the website as well. You can Google him. Now, let's get back to my current book, which is, for me, has been a very sacred journey. So for this, we have to go 40 years ago. Long before television reached in the Indian subcontinent, we are looking at a small hill town, similar to what you're seeing behind me in the background. It's called Madikeri in southern India. And before climate change played havoc on weather, this area used to get copious rainfall. I mean, it rained most of the year. So we had monsoon holidays, not summer holidays. So the few months of freedom from rain was very welcome relief for a small girl. So this girl lived in a small home, which was at the curious lower level of the street that can be found in mountainous regions. And she's playing, and she picks up something that is on one of the stairs. It is a small 2-inch wooden statue of Agastya. She doesn't know that. So she takes it to her father, and then her father takes it to a monk from another spiritual center. And the monk says, "This is Agastya. He is your guru." And so that girl was me. I was about 5 or 7 years old when I picked up that statue. My father was a zoology professor, a science man of science. He was like, oh, that's incredible. That cannot be possible. How can an ancient sage be my guru? He said. But fast forward 30 years later, a lot of things happened during the time, and it's just too incredible. Some of the miracles that I'll probably have to write another book on that. So there were miraculous healings and interesting. I'll one day talk about it. So 30 years later, my father and my mother came to live with me in a city called Bangalore in southern India. I was a reporter then with the Times of India and the Asian Age newspaper. And one day, my father suddenly took a scooter. That was the only mode of transport he had all his life. And he left the house. We were all wondering, why did he suddenly leave? When he came back, he had something very interesting to share. He said he had been to a temple for goddesses Meenakshi on the Banerghatta Road in Bangalore. And he had been asked to go there internally. So he went there. And as he was praying, a man came and tapped his shoulder and said, there is an Agastya ashram nearby. Why don't you go there? My father never questioned that about why he was being told to go there. He just went. The administrator of the temple looked at him and he said, and he was also a great devotee of Agastya. He said, why don't you go around the temple for a moment? And my father did just that. And he said, as he was walking around, he very clearly heard these words, son, you have come. And that began the journey of Agastya's presence in his life and our lives. He came back home, he used to meditate, and one day in meditation, Agastya's consciousness connected to his, and he said, you will write a book called Agastya Vadipadu. Okay? Now, we didn't know what Vadipadu means. Basically, it means the path or the way. And that is why this book is called Agastya, the Path. So my father sits down and at an appointed time, he closes his eyes and out flows this beautiful introduction about what Vadipadu is or what Agastya is about to tell us. And every day after that, over the period of 3 years, sometimes for half an hour, sometimes for 2 hours, he starts speaking with meditation and out flows this amazing wisdom that I know he did not possess. None of us did. My father never looked at books to research or prepare to do these things. He would just sit down, and soon people heard about this. They started coming home, and they would ask questions. They just pose questions out of the blue, and my father would simply go into meditation, and out would come the answers. And sometimes answers came to unasked questions, and people were like, surprised and really surprised how something like that could happen. So in 3 years, 14 pages of the book was, received, and it covered everything from death, birth, liberation, who is a real guru, creation, and many things that I am right now still wondering how we got that kind of information, and all that is contained in this book. And when this book was published, finally what he did was he took a little bit of the topics, put them together and published a book. And that book won praise from no other than the former president of India, Abdul Kalam. And then father passed away soon after that. It is that book, which is the one I'm going to show you right now, that I translated into English. And that actually was incredible as well. This began when, I was writing, I had no idea of translating this book because first of all, I don't know Tamil, the language in which this book is written. So there was no idea of what is in that book because I knew what I had heard, but that was a long time ago. So I was writing this book, Agastya, History, Legend, and Reality. And then I had a friend, Marianne Viegas, who was proofreading the book. And when she started reading it, she's turned back to me and said, Anu, don't you think you have a part in all this? Because not only did you get the statue, but she also knew about other things that I had mentioned in the book, which pointed to probably a role that I had to play. And throughout my life here in the United States, I kept feeling that there was something I needed to do. And when she said that, I went back and looked at some of my diaries and what information I had noted there, and I realized I was supposed to do something. And that's when I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and translate this book. But how? How am I going to translate a book that I cannot read? And help came. Just as Sage Agastya had predicted, and I hadn't remembered later, but only now I know, two people came forward, volunteered to help. One is Ramesh Sarkar, another is Usha Mohan. Ramesh used to be my co-worker at the Asian Age newspaper, very devout person, and he said, I'll help you. I'll read it. So from May to September of this year, every week, week after week, he would read the pages from the original book. I would transliterate it in real time, and then I would translate it. But then Usha Mohan was the other one who would compare my transliterated information with the original Tamil script and make sure I had written it down right correctly. But then the problem was understanding some of the terms he used, not knowing the language very well. I started researching that, and then it just hit me that some of these terms were just too profound. For example, you talk about the three gunas, and I'm thinking, okay, what is he talking about? And then I would go and research, and I would understand that he was talking about the three gunas of Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas. I mean, these are all Indian terms, but what I had done in my book is given a lot of footnotes explaining every term so that no reader is going to be left behind, not understanding what important information has been shared. So sometimes he gave, I mean, most of it was in the form of prose and poetry in verse form, beautiful if you read it in the original Tamil language. But I have tried my best to do a good translation of that. But let me now give you a small excerpt on time itself, from the knowledge he has given about time. And this is what he says. And this is the translated version. What is happening now, we consider as the present. If we look at it closely, what is present is actually an illusion. This is because that which you're experiencing is that which has already happened. It is something that cannot be constrained in time because what is happening now is already the past by the time you realize it. That took me a while to understand, and I realized that that's what he said. I have spoken, but the moment my mind registers that I've spoken, it's already spoken those words in the past. I'm speaking the future words right now. And then he also, and I was wondering, why did the sage choose to disseminate this knowledge through my father? After all, he was an ordinary man. I don't know. All I know is that this is not an isolated occurrence. Throughout history to the current times, we see instances of people connecting or experiencing incredible events like visions, encounters with spiritual beings, and near-death experience like our Reverend Bill here. And I do not seek to convince anyone about the authenticity of this book. I would only encourage you to read it and see for yourself. Now, what I would like to also share is a lot of people started coming together and helping me as this book went forward. So here I am, somebody without knowledge of the language, writing the book. Someone helps helps me while I'm transliterating it. Then I have a reader from UK, James Thomas, a great being, And he connects with me after reading my book, Agastya, History, Legend, and Reality. And he says, I really had felt like I had to connect with you. And I'm going to connect you to Reverend Bill. And Reverend Bill is right here in California. I didn't even know about him. And here comes a person from UK connecting us. And then Reverend Bill helps me. He says, I'll help you with the promotion of this book because I feel as a spiritual person, he could feel the authenticity of this book. He could feel the love and the knowledge pouring out of this book. I mean, Reverend Bill knows these things. Thank you, Reverend Bill. So that is how this is happening. And now I have somebody in India that again, James Thomas of UK connected me to, who's agreed to translate these books into 4 different Indian languages. And I'm amazed. I mean, here I was, a self-published author, just beginning to write something, and look at where this is going. And that convinces me that this book was meant to be. It has a role to play in the world. So if you see what the sage himself explains, and I have put that in this book, it says that gods and munis who cannot be seen by others and hence cannot directly advise people choose some people as disciples or devotees. They set right their character and then through them help the world walk on the right path. As I look around myself and around, I hear about many people of different faiths that are now being touched by higher beings. Many stories have not surfaced, probably because hearing the ridicule of rational thought or logically thinking people. Nothing wrong in that. People who need to discern, they need to do it at their own time. But science is only beginning to understand 90% of the reality that lies beyond the realms of rational thought, our 5 senses, and this gross physical world. Meanwhile, those that have faith will follow their inner voice, and these small lamps are being lit by divine beings around the world, and they will bring the change to the world. So look at the challenges we face now, whether it is climate change, pandemic, wars, famine, or just the sheer horror of individual tragedies like little children being abused and killed by their own parents. Divine intervention is the need of the hour. Don't you agree? So let me close with a final little excerpt from my book. As Sage Agastya says, rebirth is only the desire of the soul, not the will of the absolute, as some say. The drop of water in rain that forms in the clouds comes down and assumes different forms, like the stream, the river, the ocean, absorbs all the bad and the good things that are on its way into itself and becomes one with the ocean. But the moment the drop realizes that its destination is not the earth, it turns into vapor and returns to become one with the clouds again. In the same way, it is the nature of the soul that takes birth in human form to struggle through life, to age and die, and after death, leave this physical body. And once man finally understands its true purpose and finds liberation. To summarize, the soul that comes out of the supreme power is born on the earth and for some time commits good and bad actions. And finally, leaving even the idea of differentiation between good and bad behind, desires to return to the place where it came from. That is the nature of Atman, or the soul that is in you, in me, in Reverend Bill, in everybody. So are we ready to take that step into our inner self and find the purpose.
Well, I tell
Thank
you
you,
what,
Reverend Bill.
it's been my honor and pleasure to, it's like I'm not helping you, you're not helping me, we're not helping anything. This feels like this thing is going where it's going, and all of us are just a part of it. It's like it's like a duty. It's like this is what you're supposed to do. What's interesting, let me hold the book up again here. People are looking for this book on Amazon. What's interesting is my first naughty reading, which I was ordered to get done by the guru I was with in India. And I didn't believe it. I'm like, I don't believe in this stuff. And he says, no, but they believe in you. And he sent me, and my naughty reading was originally written by Agastya, right?
Right.
And then that was 10 years ago. And then I had a new one done. And when I was doing the new one this last year, this time, basically part of the predictions were that the next years ahead, I was to promote this whole stuff about the naughty readings and all that, and the readers and the rishis and all that, that was something that I was born and destined to do at this period of my life. So when I was contacted by you, it was like, yeah, okay, this is part of it. I don't have to argue this. But I would like to encourage those that have listened to this, because you've whet their appetite. If they have any curiosity at all, spiritual curiosity, they're going to come and they're going to read this book. They're going to study it. They're going to read your other books. This may not be a path that's for everybody. Okay, let's get real. This is going to be a narrow path, but what a lovely, beautiful path for those that take it. And it is a path. And I want to thank you. And if you got anything you want to leave us with, I'll give you a chance here as we close, and hope people find your book.
Thank you, Reverend Bill. I think I have said what I would like to say, and I totally believe in what he said. He said this book will reach those that it is meant to reach. So I don't have to do anything. I've done my part. He'll take care of the rest. That the very fact that somebody has already come to translate these books and distribute it in India, that's amazing. In 4 different languages. I never asked for it. It is happening. So let it take its own course. Like my father said, just let go and let God.
There you go. So with that, what's interesting is that happened to you this year about getting your books translated. I had a similar event.
Mhm.
This beautiful couple from India have become my patrons, and they found out that, what, you don't have a book in German, you don't have a book in Spanish, you don't have these foreign languages, why not? And that is being done as we're doing this interview. That process is going on right now, where our books are being translated. So sometimes things are not in our control,
Mhm.
but the intentions of the universe play out no matter what.
Yes.
So I didn't have to go looking for it. You did not have to go looking for it.
Mhm.
It found us.
It did.
Blessings and peace to you, and read the book, get it, and study it. And I wish all of you peace and love and blessings, and thank you for allowing me to interview you. God bless.
Thank you.